Ronnie Cairnduff,
Hello, Cameron, my dear boy.
welcome to Cam Talks.
Yet again,
Yet
yet
again,
again.
God, welcome for the second time, because the first time we did this, I was in a warehouse in North London.
You were. It was a very strange place, but it looked very, very amenable to everybody that was living there. So, yes, I guess you had a good time.
It was a fantastic time. Well, now I'm in your house in Alderney.
Yes, well, our house, the family house, of which you are part of these days.
I'm glad to hear you say that. I was saying something the other day, like, you've got to come over to my house. And he said, you mean your parents' house? Did you ever think that I was going to return? Obviously, you packed me off to Manchester for university at 18. And
No,
now,
we thought when you went to America, we thought, well, that's it. He's gone, he's gone. But no, you came back, and thankfully you came back, and obviously got very involved with Alderney and got very involved with living here for a while,
yeah.
which we thoroughly enjoyed and continue to do so.
It's kind of hard not to get involved over here, isn't it? Because I mean, you're just as busy as you've ever been, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the theatre, the sailing club, the Georgian, all of these things, and various. Normally, if anything is needed by anyone, phone Ronnie Cairnduff. He's bound to have something somewhere.
You really are, like, you're the first port of call for many people, whether it's weddings, funerals,
Yeah,
AV, gazebos.
go-to man.
You're the go-to man. But isn't that nice though, that you can be incredibly used on an island of just
Oh
2,000
yes, I
people?
thoroughly enjoy it. I mean, the nice thing about retirement is you become time rich. And that means you can do a lot of things for a lot of people, and I'm glad it would help anybody out with anything.
Well, you've been helping me out an awful lot in my life. So thank you very much for doing this again. I think
Yeah,
5 years ago, before the pandemic, I started the Cam Talks
yeah.
podcast just to talk to people that I know really, really well. And there's actually nobody that I know better than I know you.
And your old man.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to tell you I love you, because
Well, tell you I love you
well, do you
too.
know, I don't know if people say that enough to
Well, I think we do in our family.
we really do.
We really do.
Was that similar to you growing up? I mean, your father and you, did you have a similar relationship?
No, it was different those days. It was immediately after the war, so it was a very, very difficult time, particularly in Northern Ireland, where they had a bit harder certainly than the UK did. But it was that generation that didn't have the emotion that young families and families today have, and certainly I didn't have that from my father. And in fact, I reflected sometime after his death. That it was in later life that I was really beginning to get to know the man, because in the growing up period, they're so busy sort of creating a lifestyle for themselves, and five children, of course, with my brothers and sisters. And in fact, there was never any emotion. There was plenty of emotion shown in terms of the odd hug and that sort of thing, but never verbally. And in fact, the day that I left Ireland to go and seek my fortune and sing my way to Australia was the day my dad put his arms around me and told me he loved me. And that was the first time ever. And at that time, I was nearly 21. So it was a bit of a shock, you know.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, and it's a shame, so I never got to meet my grandfather.
No, he was a lovely man. Sadly, died at the age of 64 from a hernia, which went wrong, and he passed away. And that was many, many years ago now.
Well, I'm very, very grateful that we've been able to spend all this time together. And it has been the fact that, I mean, Alderney is, I guess you are the settler to this island. You discovered
Yeah.
this place, and then you brought your family, and many of your friends have settled here as well. And so
Yes, absolutely.
it's amazing, really. I mean, considering the fact that it is just a small island, 7 miles off the coast of France, that no one really heard of.
Yeah.
How did you feel when you first came here? When did you first come here?
Well, it's quite a story, because I left Northern Ireland with my friend Forbes to sing our way to Australia. And we'd got all the forms and all the injections that you had to go through various parts of Europe, right down through Iraq, Iran, India.
Wow.
And I remember talking this over with our parents, and my father being a little bit of I'm not quite sure what his politics were, but when we explained we were going to hitchhike with a guitar, and my father would say, "You're going to what?" Shanks's mare. That's the old expression for walking. And
Shanks's mare?
Shanks's mare means we walk. Yeah, it's like a horse. And we said, yes, yeah, we'll thumb away. And my father said, well, I think not. On the other hand, he says, if you had a vehicle, right? So Forbes and I buy this rubbishy old Commer van and did it out like a traveling van, and put a cooker in it, double bed, and all this sort of thing. Plastered the side with shamrocks in Ireland forever, all this sort of thing. And away we went. And the journey was going to take us 6 months. And off we went. And the only gig we had was in Glasgow. And we played in Glasgow. And then somebody said, have you ever played Knockdermuckty? No. Off we go, Knockdermuckty. Have you ever played in Dundee? No. Dundee. And time was drifting by and drifting by. 1 year later, we've got as far as London.
Wow.
And in that time, we've gone through all the folk clubs and working men's clubs, you name it, we did it. And we arrived in London absolutely broke. And Forbes decided he'd ask his father for some money. And I went, good Lord, no, we have left Ireland as men. I'm not daft me. I should have said, great stuff, mate, but no. And his father did send money. And unfortunately, I didn't agree with this. And we could have traveled on, but I think I just sort of said, no, we must stand on our own feet. And as it happened, we had a big row. Forbes went back to Northern Ireland. Ironically, some years later, he and his entire family emigrated to Australia.
Wow. So Forbes made it.
He made it where he is to this day, and that's certainly over 50 years ago now. But that then left me in London. And I got very involved with the folk club scene, ran 2 very big folk clubs, as you know. 7 years as the London Folk Festival organiser. So met many, many big bands, Chieftains, Planksty, Dubliners, Billy Connolly, all the lads. And nobody had tuppence to rub together in those days. But in those days, there were something like 80 or 90 clubs going just in London alone. So through that, I met my first wife, got married, and we're looking for a house. And in northwest London at the time, you could buy a house for about 5,000 or 6,000 quid.
Oh my
Believe it
God,
or
Dad,
not.
please don't. It's 2025 right now, and we're all.
I know. So we could just about maybe afford 6,000 or 7,000 quid. And gazumping was the big thing. So
Gazumping.
somebody would gazump. In other words, they would put another bid in. And in those days, the bid, it wasn't like another 1,000 quid, it would be another 100 quid. And we'd all go, oh, we can't do that. So in the end, we got so desperate. A new big private estate was being built on the old RAF aerodrome. And we thought, and there were going to be beautiful houses, but they yet were not built. And this is in February 1971. And we were determined we're going to get one of these.
And how much did you buy it for?
Well, on the way home, the Saturday before the Monday that were going to be released, I popped into the estate agent to say, well, what sort of deal have we got here? The cheapest one was £10,000.
I'll take it.
Yeah, but then, way back then, we could barely afford 7,000. So where the 10 was going to come, but we worked on the basis they're not going to be built for another 6 or 7 months, whatever. Maybe we'll, save up a bit more money and so on. Somehow or other, we did it.
Wow.
But as I was in that estate agent, and he said, we're going to open up 9 o'clock Monday morning, first come, first served. And I said, I'll be in about 8:45. And he said, I think you better make it earlier than that, mate. And I said, why is that? He said, because that lady over there, and I looked over, and there was a lady sitting. I hadn't even noticed her, sitting in a deck chair, right, in the porch. And I went over to her, and I said, oh, she says, I'm not moving. I said, oh, my goodness, what's your name? Sally Williamson, right? So Sally and Don Williamson, who had big connections here, right? And that was the first I got to know Don and Sally. So we ended up sleeping on the pavement for the Saturday night and the Sunday night. And by the Monday morning, there were over 200 people, most of whom had camped out overnight on the pavements. We made all the national press and all that sort of thing. So, of course, the 2 nights lying there on the street chatting about what do you do, what do you, all this sort of stuff. And, of course, I hadn't met Don or Sally before. And Don happened to say that his mother lived in Alderney. And of course I went, well, where's Alderney? And he explained. And I'd spent a lot of time on the Isle of Arran in Scotland through my scouting days. And I loved the idea of an island. And I thought, oh, that sounds my sort of place. And the very next year, by now, we'd moved into the new houses we'd got, and it's a year later, and I got a bit promotion in my work I was doing, and we came here in 1972
Wow.
and stayed in the Grand Hotel, where a certain Mr. Ray Parkin came up to us on a Monday morning in August and said, "Today is our cavalcade day." And of course we go, "What is that? What's that all about?" And he said, "We'd like you and your wife to be judges." And as they say, the rest is history.
Wow, so you met my Uncle Don in the
Yeah,
streets?
in the streets.
Wow.
Li- Lying 2 nights in the freezing cold, absolutely free. And we had a little gas fire, and I had, funnily enough, I had a little portable television as well. So we all snuggled up like that.
Well, you're a Queen Scout.
Oh yes,
I
yes,
mean,
yes,
I'm
yes.
sure that's not on the list of essential camping
No,
items, but
but you know how to look after yourself.
yeah, absolutely. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And when you came here, I mean, so did you come on Don's plane, or
Oh
was
no,
it
no, no,
didn't have a
no,
plane back then?
no, 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 no. It was with Irene, if I remember, and stayed with some friends of Don's, and I just got to love it, and we came regularly for many, many years. Then sadly, life happens and you end up getting divorced, and that was that.
But you came during Ray's time. I mean,
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
because Ray
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
was a real heart and soul of this
Oh,
place,
yeah,
and
running Alderney Week.
running Alderney Week, the Grand Hotel,
Yeah.
the
Oh,
Greatest Showman.
oh, absolutely. Yeah, and he and I became great, great chums, great friends.
What did you learn from Ray? Because obviously it's sad that
But
obviously
it,
he's not with
it,
us
it
anymore.
wasn't really a question of what I've learned. I think both of us bounced off each other because he'd come from uh, a fairground circus background, and I'd gone through all the entertainment side of things in clubs, working men's clubs, folk clubs, performing, bit of theatre here and there. So we'd both been in the entertainment business, but slightly different parts of it, and that brushed off in both of us. And the eccentricities of some of the things that we did in Alderney Week were mad,
Mad, absolutely mad.
absolutely mad. And things that come to mind were like the safari race we had, not a race, but the safari going around the island with about 10 big jeeps with all these people hanging off the jeeps and going through, right down through by the golf club and all that sort of stuff. And it was a real safari. We had loads and loads of people involved with it. But it was just a madcap. You wouldn't be able to do it today. I mean, insurance and all that sort of thing
Yeah, yeah.
wouldn't allow you to do it. But in those days, that's what we
Do
did.
you think that the people that you met during those times, I mean, how many of them are still here? How many of them came and stayed? In terms of actually the friends that you made then, how many of them are still around?
Well, sadly, in the folk world, and there was obviously a lot of drinking going on and a lot of drugs in those days, which I can tell you I did not touch. I was never a smoker, so it was no big deal for me. But sadly, and nearly all of them have all passed away. Um, I don't think many have got even to the age of 75.
Wow.
And just recently, we were, my wife and I, Leslie, were in London, and we went to a musical called the History of the Dubliners. And I sat there and reflected, and these were all professional actors doing this, but they got it so right because I knew all these guys, Ronnie Drew, Luke Kelly, all of the guys way back then, and they became a phenomenon that took them away off course in terms of where they wanted to be. So record producers, record deals, and the things they didn't want to do, and they had an up and down career. But I knew all these guys. We sang in the clubs together all over the place, and sadly they've all gone. But I'm still here.
You're still kicking around. Well, you're too busy to go anywhere, Dad. And you always have been really, really
Well, as the
busy.
old saying goes, I haven't got time to die.
You do not have time to die, no. And you know what I love is that because not only are you a folk singer and organizer and entertainer, but you got into video production, and
Oh yeah,
so actually a
yeah,
lot of these things have been documented. Your documentary, The Great Escape on Alderney, is still my most amazing, cherished sort of memory of Alderney. You've
yeah,
got this
yeah,
incredible music. Ray Parkin was one of the
yeah, yeah.
narrators. Eliza Berriford. If anyone's not seen that documentary, by the way, it's on YouTube, on my dad's YouTube channel, The Great Escape Alderney. And it's got that lovely music that do 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 do
Yes.
do 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 do. And you know,
Yeah.
you look at Alderney back then, and
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's just the cameras make it all look a little bit
Well, it
more
is. I
magical.
mean, if I dare maybe bring in a little bit of politics in that, because the idea of that film was to tie it in with the tourist for a tourist promotional video for Alderney, and at the time. Well, I don't want to get too political, but it had to go to a committee who, in turn, had to say it's got to go out to tender, right? So I
But
said,
you're
well,
the only video guy on the
and I
island.
said, well, I'm making this for nothing. No, it's got to go out to tender. And the chair of the tourist committee at the time had a little word with me, doesn't matter who he was, and said to me, "Oh, can you have a look at this, please?" And I looked at this piece of paper, and it was from a production company in Guernsey, offering to make the same promotional video for £5,000. And I went, "Well, that's not a bad price for a half-hour program, but I can do it for nothing."
Yeah.
And so what? The committee went to the other yes,
Really? And where's
and
that video these days?
it never materialized. I went ahead with mine,
Damn
and
right you
but
did.
the Guernsey company then phoned me up one day and said, "Are you Ronnie Cairnduff?" I said, "Yeah, yeah. We understand you've got lots of footage of Alderney." And I said, "I certainly do. Is there any chance?" And I went,
Wow.
"Off."
It's the same story, isn't it? I mean, you know,
And
we're not going to get bogged into the politics because
no,
I'm
no.
still struggling today, Dad. You
Yes, I
know,
know. Well,
but
you're going through the same thing as I did,
it's
so it doesn't
bureaucracy.
matter. You just
It's
get
you
on and
know,
do your own thing.
that's it.
Just get
That's
on
it.
and do your own.
Yeah.
Now, well, you've taken after me in terms of media and filming and so on. And I remember you as a little nipper, a 5, 6 year old, sitting in my edit suite in London. Well, sometimes very late at night, and you just love fiddling with the knobs and all that sort of stuff. But of course, different to what you guys are doing now. We had huge, big cameras, as you know, huge, big equipment, 2-inch rolling tape, and all this sort of thing. Whereas you guys now got digital
Mm.
all over the place. So
Well,
yeah,
I mean, it's interesting because I remember growing up seeing you doing everything. You know, you'd be
mm,
writing it, you'd be producing it, you'd be editing it. And then when I went to film school, they taught me about the industry and how, you know, this person does this job, this, and I just kept thinking, why don't you just do the whole
yeah,
thing?
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and it
exactly.
really is, you know,
Yeah.
it's weird how, and now of course the film industry is going through its
Well,
demise.
ironically, I went on a BBC course initially, and that was exactly the problem. So I wanted to learn about everything. I wanted to learn about lighting, sound, every aspect of television production. And so the first week, I was at grips, and I said, "Well, what's that? Oh no, you just carry this tripod, nothing else. So you're going to teach me how to do this?" And that took a week. And I'm just carrying a tripod, and I thought, "Oh, sod this, I'm
Yeah.
away."
Well, that's how it was, and
Yeah,
you know, if you look at
yeah,
YouTubers these days, content creators, people
yeah,
do the whole thing
yeah.
themselves. Dad, I've got this amazing photograph here, which I'm gonna hold up for the camera, see if and for anyone listening to this, this is a picture of my old man carrying what looks like a big camera. It's hard to tell really. Dad, tell me about this photograph. What
Well, this was for a video magazine at the time. In those days, there was a lot of video magazines kicking around, and this particular video magazine had a competition for a short video, and I won the competition with a little rock band, which I squeezed into my studio in northwest London, and made a nice little video for them, and
and
that
you got yourself a camera for it.
and that won.
And is that the camera that you were awarded?
Yeah, yes, that was a camera I was
Well, and
awarded.
on the back of it, it's really funny. It says Ronnie Cairnduff on the right, winner of the 1983 Video World Competition,
Yes.
receives first prize of the complete top of the range Sony home movie kit from John Locke, head of public relations at Sony. Sony, if you are listening to this and you'd like to sponsor
Yep.
this podcast, please reach out. It's amazing, Dad. That's
Well,
such a great memory.
this was really before I'd started big time into, and that's what I wanted to do. And my little company at the time was called Videotech One, and I worked on the basis that you rehearse everything and take one take, not hundreds and hundreds of takes. And then I'd started to get into the corporate thing. I'll tell you a little story about a huge company called Ladbrokes, which you might have heard of,
Oh, you mean the betting
the
guys?
betting guys. And I just organized my new little studio, which was a front room in a flat at one stage. And anyway, turned it into a studio, put a big cyc around and lights up and all the rest of it. And so one of the first corporate clients I had was going to be Ladbrokes. And they said, well, come along and discuss what they wanted. And it was a training film about safety and their branches and all the rest of it. And the one thing they wanted, and a lot of people know this name, they wanted Gordon Honeycomb for the voiceover. Now, Gordon Honeycomb was a huge, big name in news reading with the BBC or whatever. And I said, "Oh, crikey, how am I gonna get going on it?" Oh, I said, "Yeah, absolutely, no problem." Of course, yes, yes, we do all that. So we have the meeting, and I'm sitting in my office with two the MD and somebody else, and a younger guy who was obviously just along for the ride, whatever. And during the course of this conversation, this younger guy said that, oh, he said he loved the studio and all the rest of it. I've just bought a new camera, he said. And I went, oh, really? And he said, yes, a JVC KY 1900. And I went, crikey, that's even better than what I've got in my little studio. And he's got all the kit. And he said to his bosses, well, maybe I could help Ronnie. And they went, no, 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 no. This is a professional operation. And I'm going, yes, please.
Ah.
Anyway, I did borrow his camera. I did borrow his camera. And I made the training film. And I got Gordon Honeycomb. And that was it. That was my first into big corporates.
I
And
love that.
then it went bananas and big clients, Marks and Spencer's, CAA, BA. Oh, I did tons and tons of corporate.
Wow.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, what I love though is that there's the money and then there's, like obviously being a
yeah,
professional, but you've always made videos on Alderney. Talk about the Rosebud series, because growing up, I've always remembered watching these black and white movies
yeah,
shot on Alderney,
yeah.
which are just, they're mad. I mean, like they really are, you've got ones on trains where it's just, tell me about Rosebud.
Well,
Where did Rosebud
it
begin?
was very easy. It was 1982, and Liza Beresford and myself were doing a lot, obviously, in Alderney Week, along with Ray and many other people. And Liza and I said, it'd be nice if we did something different for Alderney Week that, and how different would it? Well, let's make a film, right? And we were sitting in her kitchen, and the conversation went along the lines of, yeah, let's make a video. And the next thing she said, well, if we make it silent, then nobody will have to learn any words. That's a goodie, right?
Yeah.
And if we made it black and white, then I wouldn't have to worry about lighting and all that sort of. That'll do. And if we speed it up like 1940, that's even better. And the idea came from that. And we're kicking around ideas, and she always had this thing about the big film where the word Rosebud is mentioned, and I've forgotten the name of the film
Oh,
now.
it's
Um,
Citizen Kane.
Citizen Kane. And she said, Rosebud, she said, yes, she's a little girl that lives in Cascades. And of course, then the whole thing just absolutely snowballed. And we got a lot of people involved with that.
Loads of people, like
Loads
a
of,
lot of Alderney famous faces are
yeah.
in those films.
And of course, the one character that was going to go through all three movies over the 6-year period of the three movies was John Arlott. And the lovely John Arlott was a great friend of mine
He was a
and
cricket commentator, wasn't he?
cricket
Or
commentator.
tennis as
No,
well.
cricket.
Cricket.
He was the voice of cricket for nearly all his life. And anyway, at that time he'd come to live over here, and he was very keen to get involved. And there's so many lovely stories. One in particular where we're filming down in Corblitz. Now, John was a very fine wine connoisseur, right? And this shot is all about how he's sitting there as the grandfather of the little Rosebud living in Cascades. And he's going to give all his money to his granddaughter. But there's the evil housekeeper. And then there was Doddy, the evil lighthouse keeper.
Oh, Dottie.
And then there was Spats Park, and they were all after the money. Anyway, this scene we have got, and we're filming it down in Corblitz, is where John Arlott is sitting with his lawyer, and the lawyer was the great friend of mine, John Cabaret, right, who was in all three as well. So John is the lawyer, and the idea is that they're going to have a glass of wine, and Patsy Mattel was the evil housekeeper. So she's going to poison his wine, right? So she brings this thing and a big camera shot of the wine on the table. John has to drink his wine, which is poisoned, and then die, right? fall dead on the chair. So he takes one and okay, and action, and she comes along, puts it down. John goes one big slurp, and he goes. And I goes all this wine. If we're going to have some wine, we better make it a good one. Gets up, walks off the set, is away for 10 minutes, comes back with a basket full of claret. We're going to do this properly, Ronnie, not that rubbish in that. And it turned out it was Ribena.
Oh no, you gave John Ribena. Wow.
Oh, we had so many laughs on that. It was just a great time.
I mean, they're great films.
Yeah, and of course Maggie Cranwell, she was at the time, Maggie Burridge now. She was Rosebud, did it for many years, and her also great friend Steve Collins. He was always the hero in all three films. Sadly, he passed away some time ago. But we had great fun doing those. And then the other thing, having done that for the very first one, I wrote to Nigel Dempster of the Daily Mail, and he loved the idea that because this was the first big movie made in Alderney, and it's going to be premiered in front of the president of the States of Alderney. But he didn't quite know what that president meant.
Yeah.
So the next thing is we get a full page in the Daily Mail, all the photographs of us making it and so on.
Wow.
Anyway, he ran with that, and we had this huge big night at the cinema, and we really publicized it. So we had a jazz band outside the Georgian. We had somebody on a microphone, loads of people lining the streets. We had the BBC cameras, ITV. There was a German crew and a French crew, right? Because we'd hyped this thing up unbelievably. And so all the artists who were in the show were all up at the Bellevue, and the lovely man, David Lewis at the time, had an open top vintage Rolls Royce. So the commentator would stand outside the Georgian. Oh, look who's coming now! Look who's coming now! And it's the leading lady, you know, and the crowd going bananas.
Like a proper premiere.
Oh, absolutely,
Wow.
It was unbelievable. And John Arlott, and then Steve Collins, and then everybody. And then we went into the Georgian, you know, champagne, and we had a handprint in the back of the Georgian. In concrete, where all the art, and I've still got it.
I remember
still
that.
There,
Yeah.
still there.
I mean, there has been a lot of very famous faces on.
Oh yeah, Ian Botham.
But even like Eliza Berthoud. I mean,
yeah,
like the creator of the Wombles.
Yeah.
Lived on Alderney.
Huge name. Yeah.
Did you know much about Eliza? I guess when was the Wombles even big at that point?
Oh yeah, but the Wombles were huge. The Wombles were absolutely huge, and her and Mike Batt, who was the producer of the music side, and unfortunately that there was a bit of legal stuff went on there, and
well, it blew up so big, didn't it?
Yeah,
So I'm not surprised. But
yeah.
you and Eliza were very close.
Oh yeah. We worked together on 2 more big movies over the 6-year period, and the very first one, then we entered into again a worldwide video competition, and when I say worldwide, it narrowed down to Japan, and we won.
You won. The Japanese loved it.
The Japanese just loved it, and we made a big thing about that as well. But yeah, it was great fun.
Wow.
Great fun. But of course, and you see in those days, when I think back of that now, we would close off roads, and the police were so helpful, and we would have, and the second one we had a gangster car race. Well, not a race; they're all trying to get to the money, and the police would close off the roads for us, and then the last one, we had the train, so we had the use of the train for about 3 or 4 days, had big crane shots and goodness knows what else, and the court. We had the court for, like, 2 days. We filmed in the court, and in those days, everybody was so accommodating. You could do all of these things. Certainly couldn't do them now.
Mm. Well, I
No.
don't know about that because I mean, yes, that was a different time. I think you
Yeah.
could get away with things a
Yes,
lot
yeah.
easier. I mean, I was very happy to get the help of the States of Alderney for my movie Sunrise.
Oh, yes. Yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
all it is like permission
Yeah,
to
yeah,
put an
yeah.
actress on the edge of a
Yes,
cliff.
I know.
You know, and
I know. I was there.
you were there. I mean, but you know that has been like filmmaking with you as my
Yes.
crew has actually been just one of the most cherished memories for me
That's
because
lovely.
you know it is a family
Yeah.
affair type of
But
thing.
it was the old saying in those days, and that's, find a job that you love and you'll never work again. And that's what I did. I then moved up from Videotape One, and I wanted a corporate name for my production company. And I thought, what could I use? And I loved the idea of Apple. And so I created Apple Television. So I go into a company's house and I said, can I have Apple Television as a registered name? And the man looked it all up, and there were the Beatles with Apple Radio, Apple Enterprises, Apple this, Apple that, Apple whatever, but not Apple Television. And I was quite astounded. And he said, well, your money's as good as anybody's. They haven't got it. You've got it. There you go. So I traded for over 8 years as Apple Television. And then one day I get this heavy letter from a firm of lawyers called Herbert Smith, who were a very big name. And it says, dear Mr. Cairnduff, we act on behalf of the late John Lennon, Paul McCartney, George Harrison, and Ringo Starkey, right, of the Beatles. You will cease as of 12 o'clock today calling yourself Apple Television. I started panicking. I was, what's this? Now, in my little folk band, there were three of us, my great mate Tony, the fiddle player, and barrister, banjo player, Mike Stimpson. So I phoned Mike up as a barrister. I said, Mike, I got this. Read it out to me, he said. So I read it out. He says, have you got a pen? I said, yeah, I've got a pen. Write this down. Dear sirs, off. And I went, oh, maybe I'll just calm it down a little
Wow,
bit. He
you
did.
told the Beatles to fuck off.
Yes. And I thought, well, I'll write back to the Beatles and say, I've been trading for 8 years, whatever, and we're nothing like each other, blah, 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 blah. And perhaps you'd like to buy me out. And then he told me to.
And then they told you to. Well, I'm
True story.
I want to take a very quick break to thank Bell & Co for helping to sponsor this episode. If you're looking for a place to live on Alderney, whether it's renting or buying, go and visit Bell & Co. They have all the information about what's available on Alderney and can also help guide you to some of the best things to do on the island. Go and visit bellandcoalderney.com and find out how you can escape to paradise. Back to the episode. I'm glad that you pursued that. I mean, I remember when I first started my first production company, it was Little Apple.
Little Apple.
I was praying that someone
Yes.
would come after me.
No,
I
no.
thought the publicity would be huge these days.
And then, strangely enough, a couple of months later, the same thing happened with the Apple computers.
And look at them now.
Yeah, well, I just told them the same thing.
I think there's a retrospector lawsuit that we should go by. Maybe at least for a few free MacBooks or something.
I know.
But business has been always a big thing. You are a creative person, you're an entertainer, but business has been at the heart. With the care home with Mum.
Yeah.
But then tell me a bit about the Georgian, because obviously this is all about Alderney, and the island really thrives off the restaurants and the pubs. And I believe back then when you came here, there was, I think Dougal said to me the other day, there must have been about 21 pubs at one point. And so everyone had their own little local watering holes.
That's right. Yeah.
How did you come about, purchasing the Georgian and turning it into what it is today?
Well, way back in the old days, a great couple, Drew and Sybil McQueen, ran the Albert. And the Albert pub was what is now the little studio just opposite the gates of the church, and that was just a great pub. And in my early days here, I would be singing either in the shares, mainly in the grand, because Ray and I had that
An
relationship,
agreement.
an agreement that I do all the singing, along with a great guy called Philip, who was a pianist, and he and I would play in this many silly stories. But how the Georgian came about was that we were in the Albert for years and years and years, and that was where us guys all drank and everything else. And then Drew and Sybil decided they would move to Spain. And they moved to Spain, and then the whole ethos of the Albert just was lost. You know, there was new people came in, but it was never the same. And in those days, the Georgian, which was down the street, and was the very old Georgian, and was fondly known as the morgue because
Oh
it
my
was
God,
full of
Jesus.
dead drinkers. And we all said, "Oh, shall we go down to the morgue?" And yeah, oh, I suppose, yeah. So as it happened, just at that time, Liz and Steve Hope appeared on the island, and they had just bought it, along with Liz's father, who'd had it before. And suddenly it all changed, and that then became the pub. So everybody emigrated from the Albert down to the to the old Georgian. And again, we used to have sing songs in there, piano players. We had all manner of music. There's always been music, and Liz and Stephen ran a very good operation. And then they wanted to retire, and of course, towards that time, he's known as the Man in Black, had made an offer on the George, and he'd bought this guy, had bought a lot of other places on the island, and he'd done a deal with Liz and Stephen, and this guy, who a lot of people, it was a lot of controversy at the time, and he was coming back that weekend, having gone to the UK to sign it up, but sadly he was killed, so they never sold the pub to him. Um, but they went on for another year or so, I think, and then they sold it to someone else. And that someone else decided they couldn't run it for very long. And if I remember rightly, from the September when these people had bought it, decided to stop, it is now the February, and it's just all sitting there. And Clive and I, with maybe one or two more, many sherbets, decided, why don't we get a consortium together and we'll buy it? So I produced
So this is for anyone listening. This is
yeah,
the original brochure
this was
for. Let me hold this up.
yeah,
So this is the original brochure for. I mean, this is beautiful, Dad, as well. Like very nicely made. I can kind of tell that this is the old school. What's it like? I mean, I remember when computers first
yeah, well,
gave you the
yes,
ability to do
yeah,
this
sort
stuff.
of. And
So
of
you could
course,
choose any color in the world, any font in the world.
yeah, and so the idea was that we were going to get about 20
Couple of
guys.
mates, everyone chip in some money.
Yeah, chip in some money. And then as the days went on and we're getting nearer and nearer, seriously buying this place, everybody dropped out one by one. No, he's gone, he's gone. No, well, I didn't. And all this. And in the end, it was just Clive and I standing. And I ended up being shown round the place. And when you've been drinking in a pub, but you've never seen the bowels of it, And I was with Andrew Montgomery, and I said, Andrew, if you could just leave me and let me nose into every piece. And it's now February, and the place has been shut since September before, and it's damp. And it was like the Mary Celeste. Every table had just been left, right? And there's cracks everywhere. All the rooms were dank and terrible state. And there's just me. Clive happened to be in England at the time, so I phoned Clive up, and he said, "Well, what do you think, mate? Are we going to go ahead with this?" I said, "Clive, this place is a dump. It's just dreadful. I don't know." He said, "Well, look, you're there and I'm here. You're the only one looking at it." And I said, "But I've got a vision. I have a vision." And he said, well, let's up, come on, make a decision. I said, right, we're going for it.
Wow.
We did.
And you
We
guys
did.
have been great partners as well. I mean, because
Oh, yeah,
Clive has a
yeah,
great business background,
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah,
are a
yeah,
visionary.
yeah.
The vision, it was a big vision, Dad. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
before
yeah.
the orangery wasn't there,
Oh, no, no,
the
no,
garden
no,
was
no.
in a complete different. Even the bar was on the other
Yeah,
side
yeah.
as you walked
Oh,
in. It
yeah,
was on
yeah,
the
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
my TV room, which I used to
Yep,
get
yeah.
left in as a kid, I used to love that TV
I
room. Just
know,
watch the same
yeah,
20 movies
I
again and
know,
again.
yeah, yeah.
Because I mean, in this brochure, you can see the original plans for the Orangery, which for anyone that's not been there, it's the amazing sort of restaurant part, the most bright room ever. I mean, Dad, this is insane. Like,
Well, and again, because of the music, the Orangery was going to become the music room, and it was all acoustically soundproofed with acoustic wallpaper, acoustic windows, acoustic ceilings, all that sort of stuff. And we had endless, and still do to this day, have endless concerts. We've got one coming up in June with Tom Bliss and myself, and a few other people. So to me, the idea was it had to facilitate all the types of functions, particularly weddings, music concerts, just whatever the need was, we had to do it. But in order to build the orangery, I came away 2 meters away from the old building because the old Georgian was in a dreadful state, and the budget doubled and the time doubled. So, and it was a good job Clive and I had other interests, and you certainly couldn't make a living out of
mm,
it, that's for sure.
because I mean,
But
the entrance to the Orangery now, where the staff office is, that was the fire escape, right?
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah,
And instead of that being a fire escape
yeah,
now, you decided to put a massive orangery there.
yes, yeah,
That
yeah,
kind of construction is
yeah,
just
yeah,
ginormous. I
I
mean,
know.
you must
Oh,
have had
geez.
diggers and builders
Well,
and
strangely enough, there's no access to the back of the Georgian, and the only way we could get a digger was to build some scaffolding and take a little digger down the side of the Georgian and into the back garden, and we scooped everything out with a little mini digger. And the only mini digger is only about 30 inches wide, but that was the only thing you could get. And dear old Ian Tugby, bless him, he was a key part of it. But and we had all our ups and downs doing that, believe me.
yeah, I can imagine. I mean, I must have been very young at the time.
Yeah.
Do you remember what year this was?
Well, we bought it in '99. We operated for 1 year, closed it, and then reopened in 2000, October 2001.
So I was
So
about 9, 10
yeah,
years old at the time.
and every step was videoed. So I've still got the whole history
You've got the whole
of
thing.
of how it all came about,
Wow.
and the grand opening and
I
all
mean,
that sort
we're
of.
very, very lucky because, on Alderney, we've got amazing, food and beverage
We
stuff.
have. I mean, in the very early days, we then had tenants. Liz and Stephen ran it for the first 2 or 3 years, which was very successful. Then we brought tenants in, and that didn't really work. And I have to say, the salvation came when dear Holly come along, Holly Fisher, and she too had a vision. And it is what it is today, all thanks to Holly and her great team of people at the Georgian. We love it. We
We
love it.
do love it. Do you know,
Yeah.
this is why this island is so
Mm.
fascinating to me. Okay, well then tell me then, because my dear mother is obviously just as in love with this island, but she didn't have a clue about Alderney either. And then one day, I believe the story goes that she was dating some very rich fella at a wedding. That you were no, you were at the wedding as well.
Yes.
You had locked eyes onto some saucy blonde at the buffet, and as you were walking across to the buffet, you bumped into
Bumped
Mum.
into your mum. Yeah.
And the fella said to Mum, "If you go home with that man tonight, you'll be carrying his cables."
And she did. And that day, it was a Saturday. We were just moving into a new studio in northwest London, and I was saying to my guys, right, you've got to be open for Monday, and we're getting everything all sorted and all the rest of it. We used to have these little booking forms about whatever we were doing, and one of my guys comes in. He said, "Oh, we said you've got a thing here for you're supposed to be doing a wedding for a friend." I said, "Yeah, that's next Saturday." He said, "Oh, that's funny. It's got today's date on it." So I missed the wedding, and the reception was down at the Roof Gardens in Kensington. So I rushed down there, filmed everything, and like you say, I saw this rather tall blonde lady, making a beeline for her after the bride said, "Put your cameras down, you know, put it and just relax, just enjoy the evening." And I bumped into your mum,
Wow.
and that was it. We just absolutely clicked. And she did end up rolling up my cables that night with
I
me.
love that. And then obviously when you brought her to Alderney, because you know, I think Alderney. Am I fair to say that this was a bit of a lads' island when you were younger?
Oh,
Did you
yeah,
get
yeah,
get
yeah,
about a bit?
yeah. Well, it's one of those things, you know, when you meet somebody, you know, love me, love Alderney. And if you don't love Alderney, well, farewell and have a lovely life. And that was the attitude I was going to adopt with your mum, Leslie. And she arrived here on a Boxing Day, having done a night shift, being a psychogeriatric nurse, and met all my friends at the at the shares at the time, and she just sort of fell in love with it, and that was it.
Mm.
Um, to the point where then we bought Apple Cottage in 1989, uh, got married in the front room of Apple Cottage, and the invitation started out just family only because it's a very small room, the front
It's a
room, as you
tiny,
may.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
tiny cottage.
So just family only, 15, 20, 30 's far too many. 40 is out of the question. 50, there's no chance, no chance. 77 people squeezed into that little room to see us getting married.
Wow.
And it was Peter Beer, who was the registrar at the time, marrying us. Do you take uh, this man? And at that time, they were called the Biffa Boys, the bin men, right, with the big lorry. And they had this rubbishy old lorry that used to go, vroom, vroom. And of course, it's sitting outside the door, and you've got to keep the front door open because it's got to be public. So, and there's Peter going, "Do you take this man?" Sorry, what did you say, Peter? This roaring noise going on. So, and then it absolutely bucketed down with rain, and the reception was in the Island Hall. And there's us all going down to the Island Hall with gagools on, and you know, and all that sort of stuff. And then again, when I look at the wedding video, sadly, a lot of our dear friends are all gone. You know, so that was what 36 years ago,
36 years
30
ago.
35 years
So
ago.
she
Yeah.
did love the island.
Oh, totally fell in love with the place, and people fell in love with her. And as you know, your mum is she's another one, time rich, involved in everything,
Yeah, she
you know?
really is. Well, I mean, you're both very involved in so many things.
Yeah.
So I mean, the theatre group is one of
Oh,
your big projects at the
yeah,
moment.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
just going back a little bit, I mean, your construction expertise didn't stop at the Georgian.
Oh, good
We
Lord,
got
no.
the big old sail deck in the sailing club.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
before that sail deck was there, that was just a little hill.
It was just a little hill, yeah, and I just had well, there's another story, and I don't wanna go into the politics, but the idea was to build up the, sailing club with 2 floors and then a half a third floor for the harbour office, and we put plans forward to the States, but sadly, that didn't materialise, but so over the years, all I wanted to do was improve it, and there was one time I'm sitting out the front, and I thought, you know, this would look really nice if we had the front of a big ship, right? And it's all going around in my head, and before I know it, I've got it all down on paper. So I go to the committee. I wasn't on the committee at the time, because that's about 14, 15 years ago now. Subsequently, I have been on the committee since then. And I put it to the committee, and they said, "Well, how much is it going to cost?" I said, "Don't worry, I will raise the money, right?" And they said, "Okay." And I knew roughly it was going to be about 10 or 12,000 quid. Right? I'd done some back of the envelope costings and all the rest of it. And because it was going to be big planks, I then sold the planks at 50 quid a meter. So you could buy a plank for this sail deck at 50 quid. And that's when you see all the names on the sail deck
Oh, that's
today.
real crowdfunding.
Yeah. And I ended up 12,000 quid.
Bang on.
And it cost 12,000 quid. And that was nearly 15 years ago. So, yeah. And I labored over that for about 6 months. I loved it. I loved it. And I always remember dear old George Barron, who is one of the founding members of the sailing club, a great guy. And he would come down nearly every other day, and he'd look at what I would be doing and, you know, seeing all the timbers going in. and he'd look at it and he'd go, and I'd go, "What's wrong, George?" And I knew he was winding me up, you know. But he would always say, "Well done, mate. You're doing a great job." But the idea was I was determined to get the curve in, and the same with the balcony part, the balustrade. And dear friend Jack Hammond and I put all that together with all the glass. Each panel had to be separately um, designed for each panel, the holes put in and all that sort of stuff. So that took 6 months.
It looks amazing.
And
And
then,
I remember doing
yeah,
the Titanic scene
we did the Titanic.
to promote it. You and Mum as Jack and
Yes, I
Rose
know.
on.
We just decided we'd follow every shot in the movie.
It was brilliant, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Absolutely
yeah,
brilliant.
yes.
I mean, but so and then of course we haven't even really spoken about Alderney Week, but
Oh,
at some point you took over as team leader.
well, I'd been involved. Ray ran it for 27 years at the helm. I did it for, I think, 16 years at the helm, but involved for many, many years before that with Ray. So, for example, now the idea of the gala nights all started off with, it used to be called the Friday Variety Show, which Ray and I ran. And year after year, we would get complaints because they could only get about 130 people into the Island Hall. So people would complain they, couldn't get tickets, blah, 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 blah. Then one year, Ray and I decided we'll run it for 2 nights, the Thursday and the Friday. Now, the way gala night works, as you well know, it works once. It doesn't work a second time. So the Thursday night was good. The Friday night was rubbish. And then the following year, and I think it was 1991, we said, why don't we take it outside into the garden in front of the Island Hall? And that's what we did. And that was the first of the big gala nights starting. And the stage then was made of endless pallets piled up on top of each other with plywood topping for the stage. I mean, you talk about the health and safety and the fire risk of that. And dear old Ken Thompson, who is our lighting man at the time through the theatre group, would always moan about wires not reaching, and you want another light. Oh, okay. And he was nicknamed Swan Vesta because if he was missing a 13 amp plug, he'd get his knife out and pare back the wires, stick them in, and stick Swan Vesta matches in to hold them in.
What?
He was called Swan Vesta.
Wow.
Dear old Ken, he was a lovely, lovely man. And of course, he was very involved with the theatre. And funny enough, I've got a lot of his archive stuff. And his original briefcase I've still got in our locker.
Wow. It was a
Yeah.
really magical place, the
Well,
Island Hall Garden is just
yeah,
it was just that kind of like that amphitheater
yeah,
style.
yeah,
And I
yeah.
remember because obviously I was
Yeah.
in quite a few of
Pure,
a lot of
yeah,
the Gala
yeah,
nights.
yeah.
But seeing you and Mum
Yeah.
running around, grabbing all these costumes and
Yeah,
not really
yeah,
knowing what's
yeah,
about to happen. And the next thing I know, my dad's doing ballet to Swan Lake on the stage with Lee Fluitt, and I'm going, who is this man? For a father that I grew up with, I very often was just amazed by your ability to walk out on a stage. But the gala nights were just absolutely crazy. You've got. I mean, we've told the story before of the SAS when they came over here. Ray does one phone call to Hereford and
over the
sends a
cam,
bunch of
yeah.
boys to come and
Yeah.
abseil down the side of the Island
Yeah.
Hall. The props, were just
Oh,
the
huge.
most
Yeah,
insane props.
yeah,
Over the costumes,
yeah,
the French Revolution.
yeah,
I mean, Lee was talking about that the other day. Like
huge.
this was serious. I mean, there's a lot of energy that
Oh,
went
yeah.
into the
A lot of
productions.
prepping, yeah. A lot of prepping.
And of course, obviously you are getting a little bit later on in life, but it's nice to see that your efforts have been awarded or at least recognised. Sat here on the CamTalks desk, we have a British Empire medal. Look at this. Let me kind of hold it up.
Yeah.
Let me hold it up for the camera so you guys can see if you're watching this. This is a British Empire medal. Okay, well, I might just put a little extra shot in there. It says instituted by King George All right, Dad, tell me, what is a British Empire Medal, and what did you do to deserve
Well,
it?
officially, I was awarded this. I was absolutely delighted and thrilled about it. That officially it was for culture and entertainment. So not quite sure about the culture, but certainly the entertainment. And the lovely thing about when you see this, your name is actually carved on the edge.
Wow. So it
Uh,
says your name on it.
yes, so that
Let me
um,
have a look. That looks amazing.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. Oh, Ronald
it has
Cairnduff.
to be Ronald. I've had to use Ronald Cairnduff in the last few years because even Arini have picked up on it that if you buy a ticket, I can't put Ronnie on it because it's not the same as the passport.
Wow.
So anyway,
So how
that's
did
a
you
good.
find out about this then? What
Well,
was
it's all very, very silent. A number of people obviously put my name forward, and it's quite a long process. And one day I get a phone call from the palace, um, uh,
as you do?
as you do. Are you able to speak? And I went, yes, of course. Well, and the first thing I always remember is it may be. It may be you may be awarded an honor, and if you were to be honored, would you accept it? And I said, well, yeah, well, yes, of course I would. Of course I would. So time goes by. Then the second phone call goes, uh, you have been nominated, uh, yet not awarded, but nominated. Would you still receive the award? And I said, of course I would. Then the third call is, you have been awarded. And I was
Wow.
absolutely delighted.
And so there was a ceremony. You went
Yeah,
to Buckingham
yeah.
Palace.
Well, no, it wasn't Buckingham Palace. It was either at Government House in Guernsey with 6 friends, or do it in Alderney where the Lieutenant Governor came over, and I had 60 friends. So what
Oh,
do you think I went for?
brilliant. So does this medal come with any perks? Do you have any?
Oh yeah, cracky! I could not. I'm now a knight of all the regalia and all that sort of stuff. But technically, for example, now you could get married in St Paul's Cathedral.
Wow.
So there's little perks like that, and there's various other perks. And we got invited to a few things in the palace, and in fact, just a few weeks ago for the 80th VE celebrations, we were in St James's Park for the with the King and Queen. So
Flying your old flag.
yeah,
I do love this though, because I mean, the tradition is one of those things where it's easy to rip up the traditional book and say, oh,
oh no, no,
because I mean, look, let's be honest, history was bloody, and it's always been a bit, but actually, the older I get, the more I'm a bit like, no, let's not rip up everything that comes
no,
before us.
no,
Let's try and honor it.
and don't be afraid of history. History is what happened, and to ignore that is, to me, is totally wrong. What then happens is the new generations create the new history, and so it keeps rolling on. And if that were not the case, then we wouldn't be digging up, looking for the Roman whatever, or going back into the past. And of course, what I love about these days is history can be animated that we have never seen before. You look at some of these history channels. I mean, with technology now, and I've just watched one about Naples. And Naples is one of the oldest cities in the world, and it is just full of tunnels. Um, I don't mean metro tunnels, just tunnels that have, and through technology, they're able to recreate all this stuff. So history just keeps on rolling
Mm.
and
Well, I think
layering.
it's important to document this sort of
Yeah,
stuff. I
yeah,
mean, this is why I'm
yeah,
I'm I'm trying to do this interview series, trying to find out
yeah,
stories about
yeah.
Alderney. Obviously, look, I mean, Alderney's 2,000 people. A lot like the UK, we've got and in
Hmm.
the Western world, we have an aging demographic. I'm going to be here for the next 50 years unless I get hit by a trolley bus,
As I always
which
say,
I
yeah.
don't even know what a trolley bus is, but I'm terrified every time I'm near a bus. What do you think the future of Alderney is going to be like, or what do you hope that the people
Well,
here who are young
the,
enough now to see
yeah.
that future, what advice would you give to
There is
us?
no doubt Alderney, like many places in Europe and indeed the world, are going through very difficult times at the moment and different times. And it is a changing world. But I'm a complete optimist. I'm not into this glass half full or glass half empty. My glass is full. So the optimism I have for this island is with the younger people. So, and the way I looked at it is, if this is your timeline in life, those people who are up here are not terribly worried about what's down there. And so, and these people are certainly not, right? So it's up to this lot now to drive it forward, and they will. And it's not for us to engage that change. It is us to support that change happening, not by telling them what to happen, because they will be much more clever, certainly in technology, than we have ever been. So to me, the young will make Alderney work. There's no question of that. And I know we've got problems with the runway and the aeroplanes and all the rest of it. That will all change. When I look at my time here, up and down, and we're in a very big down at the moment, no question. But the up is going to be even bigger. That's how I see it.
Well, thank you for bringing me here, I guess. Thanks. It is amazing. I try and leave,
Yeah,
and I
no,
try
no,
and
you're brought back. Yeah.
it's just difficult, because like London these days is what it is, and yeah, there is something nice about being useful,
Yeah.
and thank you for being my dad. I mean, I think role models are really important
Yeah,
in
good.
life, and so I'm
Good.
I'm I'm very, very grateful. Well, look, Dad, is there anything else that you want to talk about? I mean, anything that's on your mind right now?
No, like I said, there's a lot of politics kicking around in Alderney. I think if anything, the one thing Alderney to me has failed at is not to benefit from the wealth of experience and knowledge from people who do want to be in politics but want to help. And if there is a criticism with the states over the years, not just this states, has been not taking all that on board, because those tools are there, right? And what I would say to any new states, engage those people, engage all that energy, experience, but they don't want to be politicians. And just because it's not your idea doesn't mean to say it's not going to work. So being very pragmatic, accepting other people's knowledge and experience to help is really a huge benefit to the island.
Make the most of the
Yeah,
talent pool,
yeah,
and
exactly.
yeah, I love that. I mean, I'm very positive,
Yeah, absolutely.
and it almost seems to me, the more Alderney's Marmite, you either love it or you hate it, and
That's
there's
right.
some people that I've
Yeah,
brought here in the past who've,
yeah,
who've only been once, and you've got my dear friend Tom Foolery, I think he's on his 8th time here in the
yeah,
last three
yes, I
years.
know. Yeah, yeah,
And you
yeah,
get this feeling, I get this
yeah.
feeling anyway. I'm a bit like, oh, I think that the future of Alderney, because I can't imagine what it's like for you first coming here and then still having, your dear old friend Stuart Trout. When you guys get pissed and start telling stories about Alderney, I need to cover my ears half the time. It's crazy, but to think that you've actually grown up together and
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
had
yeah,
these
yeah,
crazy
yeah.
times, you've had a lot of parties.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the Cairnduff House is a big entertainment house.
It's insane. I
Yeah.
mean, I've had to slow down my drinking and only for special occasions because I don't want to encourage you.
No, 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 no,
It's
no,
it's hard to keep up if I'm being really
Well,
honest.
as my dear old friend Richard Digins used to say, Alderney used to be looked at as 2,000 alcoholics clinging on to rock. And Richard said, no, 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 that's not the case. Alderney is the biggest off license surrounded by water.
I absolutely love that.
On that note, thank you very much, Cam.